Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Gagnon, and I am the Chief Experience Officer at Intellispark. Welcome to our first Intellispark webinar of the 24-25 school year. This school year, we hope to build a strong community of practice across the Intellispark network of schools. And our webinars and PLCs will highlight the effective practices we see across schools and districts and create opportunities for leaders and practitioners to engage one another with questions and suggestions. Today's webinar features the 3-year journey to date of an outstanding partner, the Fort Osage School District. Assistant Superintendent Emily Cross will share the strategic vision she and fellow leaders established for their district around the imperative of becoming one district, one team. And together with her team, Emily will share how Intellispark has helped enable that vision that depends upon the most efficient and effective work of educators to support students and families. Work that is best achieved through action-oriented collaboration across the district. From the moment we began working with Emily and her team, we knew they would be amazing partners, as they were not afraid to share ideas to help us optimize this Intellispark solution for the benefit of all Intellispark partners. What you see today in our platform, if you were using Intellispark, may be because of Emily's team that you'll meet today. I'm excited for all of you to hear, engage, and be inspired by what they will share today. Today's panel will be co-moderated by Dr. Scott Solberg, professor at Boston University's Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, and co-director of the Boston University Center for Future Readiness. Many of you know Dr. Solberg as the researcher and creator behind the scholar-centric resiliency and college and career readiness assessments that we offer at Intellispark. Throughout today's discussion, we invite you to put questions in the Q&A, and we will do our best to address these questions mostly as the session concludes, but perhaps even sprinkled within. Our opening slide will show the names of our presenters as well as their email addresses if you wanted to follow up with additional questions or thoughts. Please also note that this session is being recorded, and we will make it available online in case you'd like to share it with a colleague. Be on the lookout for 2 emails from us in the coming days, one with a certificate of attendance and the other with a link to the recording and some materials that are referenced. Our final slide will include information on how you can get Intellispark Pro with Scholar-Centric for your school or district if you are interested in learning more. So without further ado, let's dive into the agenda and some introductions. And this is really quite a quick agenda. We're going to dive into those introductions. We're going to have a great discussion, and we'll be addressing your questions. Okay, so let's dive in. And I'm going to start by introducing you to Emily Cross, Assistant Superintendent at Fort Osage. Emily, if you would just share a little bit about the district and just how you engage with Intellispark.
Sure, Patricia. Good afternoon, everyone. As Patricia said, I'm Assistant Superintendent in Fort Osage. I am over educational services. And so that really encompasses all learning and leading in the district. And within that, tiers of support falls under my umbrella, both directly and indirectly. So we have a district of about 5,000 students, and we have pre-K through 12 with many transitions in our district. And so we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, Ryan, moving on to you.
Hi, I'm Ryan Carlson. I'm an instructional coach at Fire Prairie Upper Elementary. My role is to support teachers. So when it comes to Intellispark really being there and the day-to-day implementation of it, that would be one of my roles at a building level.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Erica.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Wood, and I am the principal of one of our 5 elementary schools. My role with Intellispark is really to support our teachers and staff with telling the story of the whole child in whatever aspect that looks like, and ensuring that we do it in a streamlined way across the district to ensure success in transitions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erica. And Greg Gilmore.
Hello, I am Greg Gilmore. I am one of three instructional technology coaches across the district. I kind of take the lead on this particular product. And my role is acting as a bridge between admin, between teachers, the tech department, and then also working directly with Intellispark staff so that all the work orders come through me. We work through scheduling on surveys, reporting, all of those types of issues that come up, trying to get the technology out of the way so that we can use the product effectively.
Thank you, Greg. And over to you, Scott.
Yeah, hello everybody. So excited to have this conversation today. I play some different roles as a professor and researcher. I've been invested in really supporting resiliency development and systems change. So love this conversation today because it's about how do we mobilize and come up with a common plan, but also adopting these new innovative practices. And that's an area that I'm really interested in learning more about and working with schools on as well. With that, I just can't wait to get into the conversation. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Scott. And I guess just for those of you who have not met me yet, I'm Patricia Gagnon, and I'm happy to be your host today, your co-moderator. My role at Intellispark is in Chief Experience Officer role. I work with our school districts, individual schools across the country on their implementation. And I learn so much from what you do. And my mission is to help kind of share the learning and share the wealth with our partners so that we build on one another's knowledge and take your feedback back to our team to continue optimizing our solution for you to make your lives easier and the success of your students and families greater. So thank you again for joining. Okay, Scott, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing this screen so that we can
All right.
Speakers.
Okay, so just a reminder, we're going to have a conversation. And so as you're listening and have questions, certainly throw them into the chat. And if there's something that we need to clarify, Patricia will jump in as we go along. Otherwise, we'll save them to the end. But I think asking the questions along the way will be helpful in terms of creating a meaningful understanding of all the pieces. So Emily, looking forward to starting with you. Wow, first you become top elementary school principal in the state of Missouri, and then boom, now you're assistant superintendent 5 years ago. I guess you have to be careful to be good at great things, right? Because people are going to come after you. And it is exciting in the work you've done. That's why this is such a great conversation. But you went into this role and you created these initial priorities, and we'd love to learn about that, right? What were they? How did you get to those priorities? What are some of the challenges you might have met on the way? But yeah, just trying to figure out, I mean, that's the vision. You started it. Tell us how you did it and really what you've learned from it.
Thank you, Scott. When I came into this role, I was an elementary principal within our district. And so I had lived in it and experienced it. And our teams were doing a lot of great things. I do believe that we were doing it, though, siloed. And so one of the things that I was very passionate about was making sure that if a student went through our educational system from pre-K through 12, it really felt like it was the same system. And it wasn't 3 or 4 different systems within one. So one district, one team really became the mantra. How do we make sure that even though we're in different physical spaces, we really are on the same team for kids? And so with that, a priority of clarity was one that we really focused on as a team. And then making sure that the why, the vision of why do we have a tool? Why are we having these conversations? Was painted well so that everyone could come on board with it. And it's been a journey.
Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges in all of that you've been able to overcome?
Well, in our district, like I said, we have 5,000 students. So in the state of Missouri, we're the 32nd largest district. And however, we feel like we're a little bit smaller of a district. And so with that, there are a lot of things that we don't operate like a business, like some of the larger districts around us. And so while it's a good thing, we had a ton of autonomy at the building level as administrators. However, what developed out of that was people thought that systems operations were optional. And so we've really had to work and shift. Some things are optional and some things are an autonomous act in our district, but then we're labeling what are systems approaches and what do we all need to be on board with.
Mhm. Excellent. Excellent. So, Erica, maybe we can turn to you then, kind of in your role. Um, it was a pretty intensive plan that started getting really going about 3 years ago, right? And every student had to have their own kind of hub page with their strengths and getting high fives. So using the technology to really connect educators to all the students and keep everybody informed, as well as parents. How did you set the stage for implementing this plan and getting everyone on the Intellispark system and really feeling confident in being able to use it?
Well, Emily referenced focusing on the why. And when we were rolling this out, that was where we lived and that was where we lingered. Every silo that Mrs. Cross spoke about was pouring themselves into helping kids be successful in that space. But what was truth in our district is kids were struggling in transitions. And there wasn't a teacher who would have disagreed with that statement. That was a common understanding in our district. So that was our in of we have these kiddos for 13, sometimes 14 with pre-K years, and we want them to be successful all the way through. So that was our why, as we just talked over and over about telling our kiddos stories so that when they left the elementary world and they continued their journey in upper elementary and middle school, the staff that was receiving them had a picture that painted all of that kiddo's strengths and painted their story, so that those educators could take the baton and more compassionately and more effectively be able to begin to meet those students' needs. So we lived in that why. And then the second piece of it with living in the why is that's not just at the beginning. We are 3 years, 4 years in, and like we continue to come back to the why spiraled with many daily discussions and use of Intellispark. So the why is intermixed there all throughout. But the second piece that I would say in launching this is just really Emily mentioned clarity, being really clear about the chunked expectations of where we started. These are the things that we are all as a system going to have in place the first year, and here's why. And with that, we had compliance as well as ownership. And that's been our journey all throughout, is we're all going to do it. And then we are gradually growing and seeing that ownership grow. But I believe that the chunked, clear expectations, just like in the classroom, has set our system up for success because we've been able to do each piece of it well and refine things as they need to be refined.
That's awesome. And I think just to, kind of chime in around the whole issue of the why. I always been fascinated, and I think you nailed it, that we have to constantly be answering that question. Because we answer it to bring everyone together, doesn't mean that when we go to implement, it's clear. Right? It may have been clear as a good idea, but how is that really playing out on the day-to-day? So we have to consistently go back to reminders about that. And then by the chunking, taking a step at a time to build capacity within the organization, right? We can't just assume they're going to walk in and have it all. And I think you've really done a beautiful job of just walking them into it. And then as they get more confident, it gets easier, I would assume, Erica, to be able to bring in the next chunk.
Absolutely. It builds on because you're building on the fact that we're seeing this be effective in our system. It's building on learning that I had information at my fingertips that helped me to better meet the needs of this student and family. So it's the practical, like I know how to use the tool, but it's also the real meaningful. This is meaningful things that support my work with kids. So the next thing that we're adding, people are more trustworthy. There's more credibility in tackling that next step.
That's awesome. And so, Greg and Ryan, your roles are really kind of on the ground, helping to make sure all of this happens. And would love to hear about your experiences. And also, what does it look like when it starts working, right? What were some of those glimmers where you went, oh my gosh, we're on our way. I can see something that's different now than what it might have been before the whole thing was done. Just to kind of hear what the real stories are when it works. So, who wants to go first?
I can go first. I'm one of
Okay.
those transitions that Erica
Mhm.
talked about, and we are starting to see the successes because we have our students in Intellispark for about 3 years now. So when my
Mhm.
teachers go in at a fifth grade level and see that they have data from third, fourth, I think even second with this cohort, we can look back and really see their story and see their growth. And so, just like Erica referenced, like seeing that success and seeing it happen in real time, teachers are going to want to use it more because they're seeing, hey, I have that data. I can look back and see where my students were academically, behaviorally, what their strengths are for back to 3 years ago. And it really helps us build from there.
Mhm.
So that is a big success that we're seeing is just being
Mhm.
able to use that data and it being like worthwhile for us. So now teachers are like, yes, they're bought in even more because they're seeing that it's worth it and worth the time and effort because student stories are really being told.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Greg, what are your thoughts?
And now to follow up with her, now that we have multiple years of looking at this and those transition points, we're able to then look ahead to the next time. Okay, what are we missing this year? What can we put in next year? How can we use this product better? But also, is there a report for that? Is there a way to organize this clearly so that we see exactly what we're looking at? And buildings working together. I mean, Ryan's building has 5 buildings feeding into them, and it's very obvious where the systems aren't, equitably
Mhm.
applied, and so it allows us to look at the next year, look at what's moving ahead, and all the while keeping that going so that, as I said earlier, the tech's not in the way. This
Yeah.
isn't a technology issue. And so, communicating with Patricia, communicating with Sean, saying, hey, is there a way to do this? Are we missing a piece here? Or what's a
Mhm.
workaround in the meantime? And getting those answers so that when teachers are giving us feedback
Mhm.
that they are being heard, and we're trying to get them the best solution to meet the needs in those transitions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, I love your title, and I think everyone on the call needs an instructional tech coach. I know I do. But I'm going to assume I'm going to assume that you actually have a pretty specialized role in that title. And just love the fact you have one because this is such a critical thing to be designated in a support role like this. Can you just give a little detail about what it is you're doing in support of educators and maybe also the change? I know that once we get into it, at first, there's some sets of questions we need. So do tell us at the very beginning. But then, as they got acclimated and using it, how did the tech support change over time?
I was on the ground floor of like the training of this and the first trainings when we went building by building and we're introducing this to teachers
Mhm.
primarily as a tech product, as getting familiar with this and starting out, as Erica said, like we're going to focus on high fives. This is how you give a high five. Don't worry about the
Mhm.
rest. Let's focus on high fives. Now we're
Mhm.
going to add supports. Well, and then supports, we said, hey, can we upload documents into supports like we can notes? And so that was added. And piece by piece, we're going through. And right now, I get to introduce this to new staff when they come in August. And I don't get questions of, well, why are we using this? Because they're too busy digging in. Once I introduce it to them and say, hey,
Mhm.
your kids are in there, your information is in there. Start looking, because I'm also involved with the rostering through Clever, so I'm making sure that
Mhm.
works as well. Um, I'm involved with the timeline of setting our goals for the year, that our survey windows, when we're focusing on key connections, when we're focusing on strengths, so that when we get to the end of the year and it comes times for those transitions, most of those things are in place. So it truly is an end of the year checklist versus an end of the year, like a chore list or something.
Mhm.
And we're filling in gaps, and all that data is there. And now that this is our second year in with the Scholar Centric, we'll have data. Our window just opened earlier this week. We will now have 2 years of data to compare in there, along with multiple years of get to know me surveys and engagement, connection, and belonging, so that each year we have a plan going into this, and that's clearly communicated. Our principals know that, when our windows are. And so my support, it looks like that. It's a variety of training and technical implementation, problem solving, work orders, things like that.
So I want to just do a quick clarification, Randy, and then I'm hoping to have you answer that too. So the Intellispark gives you the system to be able to manage the high fives, moving things to scholar-centric is then your assessment data around social emotional learning skills and resiliency that you've added in to have more details and information about the student. And I'm betting that because they've been involved in the case management, this additional information, hopefully for most of them, feels like important now. It's like it has relevance and meaning to helping really understand the student. So I see you nodding, Rian. So maybe you could go with that and just kind of explain your role, but also how these things are connecting together.
Yes. So my role comes in when we're using Intellispark daily. So like in a PLC meeting, we all sit down, let's open Intellispark. Yes, we're talking about students academically or behaviorally, but let's pull up Intellispark. Let's look at their data. What are their strengths? What is their data from Scholar Centric telling us? And how is that connecting to what we're seeing academically or what we're seeing behaviorally? So for me, supporting teachers kind of on that level and seeing the connections between what is this data telling us, how can we use this to support students with academics, to support students behaviorally or social emotional. I do a lot of modeling. So if a teacher comes to me with, hey, I have a question about this student, I can't figure this student out. All right, let's open Intellispark. Let's look. What is it telling us? What is their story? What can we learn from that? And then as we're implementing next steps to support that student. So really just keeping Intellispark in the forefront of teachers' minds as we're working through students, because it really all is there. Like any questions we have about students can be answered by opening up and looking at that data and that story that we have created. And so then using that as a way to like start planning next steps and how to support.
And I bet with it, oh, sorry, go ahead, Greg.
And she's also encouraging teachers to put new information in there to add to the story, because I've seen it myself, that it's not just a consumer product, it is an interactive. And so that as students transition from 5th grade to 6th grade, they're contributing. And then they have another big transition from 6th grade to 7th grade when they send them to our middle school. And so she doesn't want to send them empty-handed. And and so that's a big part of her job as well, is this is really great information. We have to keep it going.
Yeah, and I think it's very exciting. I think as educators, they're being told they need to do something, but they never see the impact. And now what you're helping them do is really see the value that if they will take the time, people are going to use that information, and it's going to impact the quality of their lives for those students and their families. This is an amazing, opportunity. I bet we should be having a lot of flowers sent back from the 7th grade down, right? To make sure that they're thanking everyone for all of the work they've done. Just putting that out there, we can see how that rolls, right? But on that piece, I think also, I assume that in that professional learning community model, right, an individual educator may not feel really confident about what's happening, but as a team, I'm going to bet that there's a collective self-efficacy that's emerging through this as well, that we can take a look at this together and we can start coming up with some really important recommendations. Is that what you're finding as well, Rihanna, as you're doing this?
Yes, for sure. And I feel like too, as teachers are seeing the success of this, they're holding each other accountable when it comes to like, hey, we're going to talk about this student today, and I noticed this isn't in there. And we really need that to be able to determine next steps. And so through that, yes, they're really feeling kind of that success of being able to hold each other accountable for making sure that we're using Intellispark, but we're also adding our stuff in there and just kind of keeping this going because we know how helpful and useful it is.
Okay. And that's just one more quick one. I know I want to move on, Emily, I can't wait to talk to you some more about the whole adoption and, buy-in and everything. But what about for students with disabilities? Are you finding that there's more connection across the planning? I know with IEPs, there's certain things that have to happen. Are educators able to use this to coordinate the services for the students better?
Yes. When we're in meetings and we're looking, like Intellispark is the first place we go to be able to see a summary of the IEP or to see all of the supports that students have in place, because it really is giving you like that whole picture.
I think that's great. It's great to have that transparent, and then also we're all holding each other accountable to make sure those supports get taken up. So that's great. So Emily, in the translation from research to practice literature, there's a whole thing around the fact that we've got these great systems. We know technology, and using it to coordinate is necessary. We can't just do it by word of mouth. Everyone's in their room. We can't, we have to have this kind of a piece. But the ability to actually fully adopt it and then it becoming part of the culture is something that is a brand new science, right? What are the conditions that make the adoption occur? We've talked about that up to this point. When did you start to see that it was becoming then part of the culture, right? It was becoming something that everybody was getting and realizing that it became a more natural thing to go to and use and really becoming dependent upon as you go forward. Do you remember what that looked like or felt like from the district level? Is that started to emerge?
Yes, I believe that started to happen in our second year in pockets. I think this year, to Ryan and Erica's points, it was oh my gosh, we have a pretty complete picture coming to us before school even starts about kids. And so they were diving in. I believe we had to shift a mindset. And I don't know if this happens in anyone else's district, but I think there's lack of honoring the work that was done before whatever level the kid is in now. And I've heard a lot, well, let's give this kid a fresh start, or it's a blank slate this year. And I really believe that's a disservice to kids and their families. And I believe I have heard that mind shift across our buildings for two reasons. I believe one, we answered the question of how do we carry this information forward from year to year? But now we're also looking at the efficiencies of how do I get information to all the right people in a timely manner within the same day or the same week. And so we're answering and solving different problems with regard to support teams, more so now than we ever have. And I also believe that another outcome of this was, and where I saw the aha for some administrators and teams was, when we implemented Intellispark, it shined a light where we didn't have effective systems. The places where we had effective systems, those leaders were able to say, oh, okay, this makes sense. Now this is going to make us more efficient here, here, and here. The places where maybe we didn't have as effective a system, it was a rewrite of the system. And that tells me that it probably needed to happen. And so now we see those things in practice now this year, more so than ever, and that feels really good.
Oh, that's amazing. That must feel great. Being a parent of a child on an IEP, I can tell you that yes, going into the school at the beginning of the year as this fresh start, we often will keep him out of school until they've read the IEP and got caught up, because no, it's not a fresh start. We need to all know what's going on, and complicated cases need that level of instruction and support. So really, I really like that you're getting to that point, right? That we really are preparing as we go forward. So when you look at any metrics, I mean, is there some data, some feedback? What are you getting that's helping you from a district level know, okay, we're going to keep moving and we're going to keep investing because it is an investment having specific, having Greg and Rams that are actually there helping it go. So what is it that you're seeing in that way and the broader impact maybe from community parents? What do you have in terms of that?
I'll share it kind of in testimonial form here because
Mhm.
one of the reasons why I was looking for something like Intellispark was I was tired of thinking about kids in numbers. There's so much more to a kid than academic achievement numbers. And so things like a teacher saying, oh my gosh, I could not find the gem in this kid. I was not able to connect. And I was able to go back and read high fives from years past where other teachers saw the thing that could be connected with. That to me is good evidence that this is important. And this was a teacher who didn't want to do high fives in the system. They just wanted to write nice notes. Well, there is a pro to having that historical data. We have teams talking about resilience, and especially when we were coming out of the pandemic, what was separating people who were handling the extra stress over others. And so real deep conversations have been coming out of that data. Also, evidence of that is where we still have work to do is, kids probably just, hurried their way through the survey. Well, then when you triangulate some data and you realize, no, all this data is telling the same story. So again, we're getting some more ahas through the process. We talked about the assets that Ryan said. I mean, that's how they start all of their student support meetings. What are the assets for these kids, the strengths? And that has been reshaping the conversations, which has been really strong evidence. I mean, I could look at numbers. Buildings are, hey, let's get more high fives in this year than we did last year. Really utilizing this as tangible growth measures for the staff and the behaviors that we have. I could go on and on about what we're utilizing to say that this has been helpful.
That's fantastic. And it's great that you can feel it and you can see it as it's happening, right? It makes it so much easier to continue investing. And I also think that, like you said, some of the teachers are going to be more hesitant, and I'm fine with that. Teachers need to do things that are going to really support their work with students, and they don't want to be, distracted. But when you have other educators or you have other data coming in, it makes it easier for them to buy in, right? We don't have to push them as much as we're kind of pulling them into something that we can demonstrate is working. And that must be nice to have something that's that open and transparent, as you were talking about, seeing the high fives and then seeing the impact start to tell us how we can connect with those students as we're going forward. That's got to feel great too. That's great. So, Patricia, anything coming up? Any questions or follow-up things before we shift into the next phase of conversation here?
I don't have any questions. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, yes, I did just get a question. Thank you, Karen. What were the chunked steps that you referred to? Rhiann and Greg, you talked about chunking. Which steps did you take first? What were sort of the phases, if you would?
And then maybe also where are you going next? Like, where do you see it evolving into? Be great.
Well, before Greg answers, because he helped create a very clear to read and understand timeline for our effort, which is good. It just keeps everybody on the same page, everybody understanding what we're doing. I was the vision person with a group of people around me who helped me see that we needed to chunk, we needed to give PD in a way that was, teachers were able to absorb it at the time. And so that was very helpful to have a group of people around me, including instructional coaches who could say, okay, this makes sense. So Greg, do you just want to share a little bit of how we chunked for the first piece?
Well, we started small. We fortunately they supported Clever login, and so we were able to our identity management was all taken care of. It wasn't logging in, it wasn't making accounts or anything like that. So let's get in here and look at this. And when it first came in, it was a blank profile. I mean, every kid has a profile, but it was hard to see like the end in mind there. But it was just imagine, lots of imagine, and Emily's good at the imagine piece of that. And so not everyone understood that. And so when it was, okay, we're going to focus on high fives in here, like I said earlier, and then we're going to start putting in supports and notes, and then you have the questions of, okay, what kind of notes do we put in there, and how much detail do we put in there, and what the parents can see this, and we can then start navigating through those steps, and that, and just keep bringing them back to the why, but also, okay, we're focusing on this, and as we get better at these pieces, to now where it's becoming more of the expectation, the norm. We don't print off 504s and we don't print off IEPs anymore. We don't
They go
shred
right
those
into the
at the end
system.
of the year. They're all in Intellispark, and people now notice when they're not there. And
Greg,
that,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I would just add there, Intellispark has evolved over time. And in our reflection and with how Intellispark, the tool operates now, I would not start with just high fives, because messaging there, we had some hiccups with that because depending on the messaging at certain buildings, there were some staffs that were like, why do we just have this? This is the high five thing. And we weren't able to really sell. We had to do a lot of unlearning about Intellispark to then get those teams on board. So I would, if I were to do it all over again with the way it is set up in Intellispark now, I would definitely be starting with the strengths, and I would be starting with supports, because I think that really is, for us, the meat and potatoes of it. And then everything else supports that main work that we're doing.
Yeah. And I think, Emily, you bring up a huge point when there needs to be a dialogue between the technology supports, the people that are designing the technology, and the people using the technology, right? Because the design phase looks great on paper, looks great when we test it out. But when it goes into practice, a lot of things happen. One, there might be additional uses that we hadn't anticipated that we want to evolve into. And as you described, and I think, Greg, you said as well, you got to have some things in place so we can see the vision of where we're going as it's happening. And I think, I've been working with Intellispark for a while, and I'm kind of the researcher on the back end, but just been impressed with the need to evolve and change and really listen to the work you're all doing, which is another reason why having these is so important. We get to learn more ideas about things that can happen. So I really appreciate that. That really bodes well.
Well, and I would echo that, Scott. They have been very responsive. I mean, Greg had to help us start prioritizing what information we were going to send to Patricia and Steve, because we had wish lists every day. And really almost everything we've sent in, it has been answered. So we appreciate that.
No, that's fantastic. I used to be a director of a tech piece on career information systems, and I was always amazed at how what I thought was the most complicated thing, the tech group could get in there and change it in 2 minutes. Then I have a very simple thing, like, oh, that's going to take some months of redesign. I think you have what Intellispark has is some really talented individuals that are just ready to dive into this stuff and make it responsive to your needs. So that's really exciting to hear as well. So yeah, please,
Can
Erica.
I add one thing to the chunking of expectations?
Yeah.
As a building leader, I think that taking those bite-sized pieces and putting them into place, implementing, having teachers try those things. Emily used the phrase, it shined light on systems. And I think at the building and district level, it did that for us because specifically supports. We were able to, Greg mentioned how we kind of uncovered peeled layer after layer back of what supports do we want in there? What format of supports do we want there? And at the end of the day, it streamlines supports and service to kids and families. We've done lots of just like, take 2 steps forward, and then we take a really productive step back to refine and get on the same page with things as a building, as a district. that's been really, really helpful as a refinement to systems. I think that shine the light on systems is a really important part, because we would be able to see inconsistencies, we would be able to see gaps in all areas, starting with, academic interventions, but then also behavior support plans, and then mental health supports and basic needs supports. All of those, it just was a vehicle. Intellispark's just been a vehicle of really good reflection for us to shine our light on systems that at the end of the day impact the quality and how efficiently and effectively kids are getting supports that they need. And I don't think if we would have just started with let's use everything, I don't think as leaders we would have been able to identify clearly things that needed refined and remedied and maybe a reset on. And I think from that lens, it made us stronger as a one district, one team. And for me, that wasn't something that I had early on anticipated, but it's been a really strong benefit at the building and the district level.
I think that's awesome. I just want to pull out a few things you just said, which I think are really key. You talked about efficient, but I think by that meaning, once we have something that's innovative and something working, because it's in the system like that, we can go back and look at how it might apply with other students. So we're not spending all the time trying to reinvent. We can actually apply what we've learned as a community, right, that's working. And then we can also start reflecting on what we can do in those supports to improve those, right? So it really is helping you all provide not only better quality, but you provide, as you said, efficiency. You're getting students to the supports more quickly because we're all confident and understand what we have in place. Can move forward. And you can't do that as a one district, one team. It's that way we can do it across the whole district, not just in one school or in one place. We can all learn from each other as we're going along. I think that's really an effective and powerful way of really, it's just the diffusion of effective practice, which is what you're describing. Really amazing.
Scott,
Now, yeah, go ahead. Please.
Sorry, if I may ask, share a question. One was, are they actually loading MTSS or plans or IEP plans into Intellispark? So if one of you could just share, what you are exactly sharing, because I think people do often ask us, well, can we put this in there? How do we put this in there? How do we share it? Is there a limit to what we'll share? If you can just kind of detail that a little bit.
I'll speak first and then guys chime in. So we have academic success plans. We have behavior success plans that are our own templates that we've created. We do have summary of accommodation pages from IEP that is loaded there. Our 504 is loaded in. And we choose, Greg, correct me, but we're linking some of our plans, right, until they're final.
The plans that are in progress, yes, are linked to a Google Doc so that they'll stay fluid. But then by the end of the year, the expectation is that they upload them as a PDF so that we don't have access issues the following year. Yeah.
So we are a Google district, so we want to make sure that those links are live throughout the year if we are adding those things. The benefit for this that I absolutely appreciate is, everyone who serves that student is getting access to that immediately. In my old school days of being a teacher and a principal, we'd have a lot of people walking around providing paper copies to things, having initials on a clipboard, and now it's just very easy to get it to where they need to go. We also add reading success plans to that. If there is no plan, but we have a certain support that needs to be put in place, just the support can be put in there. I believe we have some visual stories linked to some of ours. What else am I missing? Anything else?
Yeah, just tier 2 strategies when it comes to, so if it's proximity to a teacher, if it's chunking, for a student, if there are separation plans, if there are safety plans, all of those things get uploaded in there. And then like Greg mentioned, the cleanup for the next year so that those are ready to go and active.
Emily also Emily also mentioned like supports that don't have plans. So if we have kids that are triaging with someone or receiving reading intervention, or we have attendance champions, all of that is added to supports too, even if there isn't a plan to link, so that then you know and can see the history of how long they've been receiving a support.
That's
Counseling
fantastic.
intervention, same thing. If they're in a small group, small friendship group, divorced parents group, those type of things are also in there.
That's awesome. And it really just the ability to then read a student's background and know what's been working, where are we at, and then we can add to that and keep moving forward. I think that's really exciting. You know, Erica, are you all working with Portrait of a Graduate at all in terms of some of the pieces you're looking at? Because it seems like this idea of the one district, one team is also sort of solidified when we have a common goal that goes beyond just the grade or just the academic or just the social. It's like, where do we want to have these students? How do we want them to enter this world of work as adults? So maybe you could talk a little about how that's supported by, or how that's helped kind of get buy-in and everything as well.
Okay, I'll chime in first here. So we do have a profile of a graduate, and our vision in our district is that all students will be success ready when they graduate high school. But what that means when you're stepping back within our system is that means all kindergartners should be success ready for first grade and so on. And we're still working on this. This is a work in progress. We just have had some great debates as of late about why aren't we giving more feedback on these dispositions than academic skills. You know, is it more important that an adult graduating high school is self-aware and can collaborate and communicate effectively than it is for certain standards academically that we're teaching? And so we're digging into this. I think that this, it has helped inform what we're talking about with regard to strengths. When we first started out, we would get strengths like really nice boy, right? And now we're using executive function skills language, and we're using profile of a graduate language, so that, again, it's ubiquitous. We're all speaking the same things, and we know these things need to be developed across our system. And that starts really as young as pre-K. The high fives are very telling. When you see what they were getting feedback on at 3 and 4, and then you have a student with some deficiencies in second grade, and you can look back at that, or first grade and look back and say, oh my gosh, they've grown a lot with this. So even the high fives help tell that story as well.
Yeah, no, it's great. So we've got a couple minutes before we kind of go more into questions, and I just wanted for Greg and Erica and Rayanne to just kind of what are the tips or the little bits of wisdom that you want to pass on to the group in terms of your experiences with the system so far?
As a building leader, I would just highlight on 2 additional things. We have talked a lot about telling each child's story, but I would encourage, one of the things that's been really successful is before school starts, yes, teachers have access to those profiles, but we have found great success in creating time to read the story. And we kind of, build it up as a really fun thing. We get to read each kid's story. And instead of it, look at a profile, use a checklist. Nope, we're reading a story. And teachers, we use note catchers and different things like that for them to go through and pick pieces of the highlighted pieces of those story. But providing that time to build that background allows us to, as a system, ensure that kids are getting the best support and environment and instruction that they can day one. So providing that time and structures and making it a big deal to read that story has been helpful. And then the second thing that I would just say is follow up. Follow up on each of the pieces. So if there is a situation where Intellispark really helped a staff member to be able to do X, Y, and Z for a kid, we talk about it. If, we were in an interaction with a family and there was information missing from Intellispark, we talk about it and it's a follow-up. The phrase, put that in Intellispark, is a really regular phrase around our district. And that helps people to build the habit of doing that before they're asked to do it. It also helps people to get into the habit of looking there before they're asking in other ways. So I would just say that follow-up piece of it has been a big one for creating a commonly used vehicle and tool for every staff member, no matter their role.
That's awesome. Thank you. Greg and Rhiannon, any other some thoughts?
I would just add, kind of going back to that why and that purpose, just kind of keeping that alive. So when you're in meetings, like pointing out how helpful was that when that was in Intellispark, making sure that we're kind of keeping it on the forefront of teachers' minds that like this is important. This is our tool, and them to really see the impact of that, you have to keep going back to that purpose. So just that tip.
Well, and just one quick thing between the two of you is that you're also talking about having a positive perspective for that student. So when you're talking about it as a story, it's really about how do we empower and help this individual moving through the system. And so having the whys and reminding ourselves around that, I think, is really critical as we go forward as well. Greg?
Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, I'm sorry, Emily. Emily, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add there too that even in my role as assistant superintendent, I'm using it a lot. So I'm speaking to parents and I still look through the lens of need to know. So just last week, I probably used it 3 or 4 times to send notes to the team because I had valuable information that team of teachers who serves and that principal who serves that student needed to know. Where before we had this, I would have had to look up that student's schedule. I would have had to then send those people to it, but I might have missed 3 people who were added to that team who needed to know. And on the reverse side, when I have parents call with a lot of questions about what we might not be doing for their child, I pull that up and I can speak eloquently to everything that is happening in our district. I'm very good PR for our team in those conversations, and it helps diffuse someone who's very anxious thinking that we don't care about their child. So
I think that is such a huge thing. I mean, that's just mind blowing because having worked with so many principals over the years, they talk about parents coming to the principal to find it. Principals to know what's going on, right? They don't have it. Why?
Yeah.
And then the parents see that as obviously you don't care. You're not in charge. You're not what going. And now you are. Now you have all the information you need to respond immediately. And how much better as the leader in the school or district, in this case, to be able to respond, because you're right. It's not only diffusing, but it's communicating a quality of care. And I think that's really fantastic as a piece. I think that's amazing.
And just to give one more example for you, Scott, you were talking about evidence of things working.
Yeah.
I received a text from a building leader today. Hey, Emily, here are the students who met their attendance goal this week or this last month. If you want to send high fives to any of these kids, that would be great. And just again, a system where we can all participate and it makes sense.
And they see the connection and they're ready to say, let's keep it moving. That's fantastic. That's great. Greg, any last thought before we open to some questions?
Part of the system or my contribution is the plan, having a plan, and part of the chunking, we chunk this throughout the year. We have a survey and they're aligned with PD day. So there's a survey and there's a PD day right after that we can look at the data. Then the next survey, then there's another PD day. And then we'll focus on key connections and strengths. And then our kindergarten teachers focus on key connections and strengths in January after they have a chance to get to know their kid. And of course, people have the opportunity to add those throughout the year. But if we chunk this, is like now we're just focusing on this and now we're focusing on this, it gives us short-term goals throughout the year so that as a system, as a district, we're doing the same things at the same time. And then, as I said, at the end of the year, all those pieces are in place because we've taken some time and chunked that throughout the year.
That's great. So, Patricia, I opened up the questions. We got some nice ones here.
We do. We do.
Yeah. So two of them look pretty similar. It's basically around incentives and kind of rewarding active educators, maybe the first ones getting bought in and stuff. Was there anything you all did to support that, or were there any things you thought about in terms of giving out something that would, just to acknowledge the efforts that they were making?
Yeah, so my approach has not necessarily been to incentivize. I'm not sure if principals are incentivizing that in any way, but I give direct feedback. So I also get the digests for every building. So if I'm seeing very specific, authentic feedback in a high five, I'll copy that, I'll send it to the teacher, and I will say, oh my gosh, you got very specific on this. This was highly effective, and really just acknowledge and show the appreciation for it. On the other hand, if I see copy and paste a lot, we still have a few people who like to copy and paste comments. That then I would probably give feedback to the principal. Hey, are you checking on this? Have you given feedback on this? We did set goals, and so I work through kind of that scoreboard mentality. And then when we're at district leadership team meetings, I will show high five data. I'll show hub visit data, and I'll talk about that, because then it's the thought-provoking question. How are our systems not being utilized? And because I can tell very quickly on hub use, have we internalized the need for this tool to be in our support system? So a lot of it is about feedback, not necessarily extrinsically motivating. The extrinsic
Yeah, but
motivation. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, but that's huge though. I mean, for them to know that you are watching, and all it takes is that one, what? I got a positive comment. Boy, pass that through the lunchroom. I mean, that is huge in terms of saying that you value this so much that you're checking in and you're looking for positive behaviors. And I love the fact, going back to the principal, and say, hey, got to get some, improvement on here. So you're letting the system know there are consequences as well. Just those little bits. And there's so many educators that are unwilling to try something new because they don't think anyone is going to do that, right? Why should I try if I'm not going to get? And that's like credit for putting in the positive work. Having you, Emily, give them a little positive feedback is like, oh my gosh, that's beyond anything that they would get otherwise, right? So I think the appreciation is just a tremendous piece of reinforcement. I really appreciate that. That's really critical. And it just goes so far in saying that we value it, we own it, we're going to keep going on it. So that's really, really powerful.
Another thing we did, and this was from a parent request at one of our community input evenings, asked, is there any way that they could be giving high fives to our staff for the great things that they're doing? And so our PR director opened up a survey link that's on all of our social media. It goes out in when we appreciate all of the different groups. And so our staff gets high fives now from community, from administrators, from colleagues, from students. So I think being on the receiving end of that, they also are starting to feel good about it. We see parents screenshotting high fives and putting them on Facebook and saying, oh my gosh, this is what my child got today.
My child got, yeah. That is so awesome. And I think so great to have that happening, because I think when educators can experience what it feels like to be recognized for doing something positive, they're going to recognize themselves, oh, this is how my students must be feeling. And it's mutually reinforcing that this is the way, we want to be moving forward. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Patricia, what else have we got? Anything there that we need to hit on?
Well, I think actually, Emily, you gave some great examples of what you're doing to engage with Intellispark. Eric, if you can share as a building leader, what are some of the other ways that you see other building leaders using Intellispark beyond encouraging their team? What are your most common kind of use cases for engaging?
Sure. Well, like Emily, through parent conversations and different things like that, I use it the same way. Building leaders use it the same way, whether it's getting up to speed on a conversation that teachers had or that I've had, and just communicating to from the need to know lens. We've talked about supports a lot. So that's, as a building leader, that's a layer that we use a lot, just to check on the fidelity of supports being utilized. when we are having a kid finding success and we're doing a high five and things like that, again, connecting it to the supports that are there, as well as if there's a student struggling. So the supports piece is huge. But then I would also say, when talking about systems, within the MTSS model, we have all of this academic data that we're looking at, and we have a systematic way when we are looking at kids' strengths as well as their areas of need academically. Adding the surveys through Intellispark has given us that we've been able to apply the same system. So instead of from a ready to learn standpoint, or mental health needs and different things, resiliency, instead of it just being teacher discretion to say, hey, this kid's struggling, instead of it being just discipline data, instead of it just being that, we have student voice in that with those surveys. So that's an area that's been very empowering as we grapple with, we have this data. How do we use this systematically within an MTSS framework to be able to meet the needs of kids from a tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 stance?
Right. And I love the way you were saying that this is, when we have this kind of assessment, this is the student speaking to us. That's a great framing. That really is fantastic. And then our goal is to figure out, okay, what does it mean as they're talking to us? And then you're right, the brainstorming and having a collective group that's working, and you've already got some history now of things starting to work. It gets easier to start plugging in the tier 1, 2, and 3 kinds of supports. I think it's just really great. Great to hear.
I have one more point, and I know we're over the top by 1 minute, but this has just been so chock-a-block full of great examples. And Emily, there was something you mentioned before today's call, and you said, there was an area where you decided it needed to become a little bit more directive this year because somebody had left. Can you tell the experience of that aha of like, actually, when did you realize you were missing a lot of information?
Yes, so oftentimes those staff members who deal with the most sensitive information on our team, they have struggled the most with putting things in Intellispark, even with sensitivity, user rights, and those things. And so I think as we were explaining the why, some of those people heard the why, but they still just couldn't think that they needed to put some things in there. And we had 2 key student support people leave who had been here a long time and had a lot of history about students in their brains or their file cabinets or wherever. And they left late in the year. And so when they left, they left with a plethora of information about students. And I think that is when the big aha, and unfortunately it had to be then, but that was when the big ha-ha came of, oh my gosh, we don't have a lot of information. And those two teachers or counselor, social worker, they did add some things and they tried to add stuff before they transitioned out, but you can't possibly remember everything if you're not keeping up on that. So I believe that crew now understands and really just saw something tangible and helped explain that to them.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic, and really getting all the team. And I think, Patricia, one of the things that you and I talked about, when I've worked in schools and I feel like the system is fully on board and they're feeling empowered, the end of the year has a lot of energy in getting ready for the next year. And I can imagine now those 7th grade teachers realizing we got to get down to the 6th grade to do some planning, right? We've got to each year going back to say, let's make sure we're all clear so that when that fall starts, we really are hitting the ground running. And that'll be an exciting moment where you know that we are on full cylinders. We're all moving forward, feeling empowered, feeling energetic. And yes, it's the end of the year, but we're not feeling completely depleted. We're feeling empowered to keep moving with our students. So really exciting stuff. So fun to have this conversation with you all today. Really appreciate it.
It has been fun.
Yeah, and I just want to say, reinforce what an incredible wealth of knowledge you've shared with our audience today. We thank you for everything you've done to be boldly moving forward, to be helping us to make this even better, because truly you have given us fantastic feedback and it has benefited so many. And I just want to thank you all for everything you're doing and for joining us today on a Monday, which is a tough day to kind of dive in after the Mondays that we have. But thank you, and thank you to all who attended today. You know, hopefully you came away with some really good examples. I do have a couple of requests. There are some requests from the Fort Osage team if you're willing to share a couple of things. So I'll be following up there. And people will receive the recording, and there is email information if you wanted to ask any follow-up questions. But I just wanted to say thank you, and may it be a fantastic week for you all. For anyone who is kind of new to the discussion, I'm just going to put our kind of screen up there so you can see how to reach us if you have any other questions. But otherwise, I wish you all a fantastic week, and big thanks again. Thank you, Scott, as well, for your great questions and for leading the discussion.
Oh, it was very fun. Thank you, Patricia, for all the coordination. And thank you, team. This is really exciting. Thank you.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
We appreciate it.
Have a great one all. Bye.